I really like Battlefield 6. Like so many Battlefield fans, I was wary about the series' ability to recover from Battlefield 2042's colossal failure. Luckily, it seems that EA have finally got their act together. Battlefield 6's multiplayer is kinetic, frantic, fast, and most importantly, fun. It delivers the series' trademark blend of arcade action and military simulation with interesting maps and deep class progression. The game also looks and runs great, even on my mid-tier laptop, thanks to the Frostbite engine. All in all, Battlefield 6's multiplayer is a blast, and I'm looking forward to playing it until EA enters private equity hell. Unfortunately, the same can't be said for Battlefield 6's single player. This campaign is a mess. The story is nigh incoherent, the levels are weirdly structured, it barely feels like a cohesive whole. And yet, I can't stop thinking about it. The Battlefield 6 campaign is one of the most fascinatingly bad games I've played in years. At this point, you might be asking, who cares? This is a fair question, since I sincerely doubt that anyone is buying Battlefield 6, a, need I remind you, $70 game, for its tiny 6-hour campaign. Still, I'd argue that great FPS campaigns are often just as important and culturally relevant as their multiplayer counterparts. Take, for example, Titanfall 2. That game's multiplayer has stood the test of time, no doubt about it, but so has its excellent campaign. Those 5 hours of incredible game design are why I and so many others picked up the game long after EA had abandoned it. The same could be said about Battlefield 1's campaign. While not as stellar as Titanfall 2, it does an excellent job at immersing the player in the game's gritty World War I setting. The War Stories format creatively introduces the player to Battlefield's many mechanics, laying the groundwork for a less frustrating and more fun multiplayer experience. Moreover, World War I FPS games are simply few and far between, making Battlefield 1's campaign continually relevant and appealing for those interested in the period, like myself. Great FPS campaigns have the potential to augment and even outshine multiplayer modes. When executed well, these experiences are very meaningful. And yet, the number of AAA or even AA single-player FPS games only dwindles with each passing year. Honestly, it's kind of a miracle that Battlefield 6 got a campaign at all. See, the campaign was originally being developed by Ridgeline Games, a new studio founded in 2022 by EA and Halo co-creator Marcus Leto. But EA closed Ridgeline down in early 2024 after the studio failed to meet expectations, shifting development to the 3 remaining studios under the Battlefield Studios umbrella: DICE, Criterion Games, and Motive. These studios were already busy working on Battlefield's gigantic multiplayer, and now they had to find the staff and resources to put together a full campaign in a year and a half. They didn't have much to work with either. Windows Central reported in July that, quote, there was essentially nothing left that Ridgeline had spent 2 years working on that they could pick up on and build. So the mode's development had to completely restart. This led to ballooning costs, and as of spring 2025, it's the only mode that didn't reach an alpha state, end quote. But EA insisted the campaign was coming, and somehow the campaign was released with the rest of Battlefield 6 on October 10th. I'm not sure how much crunch was involved in the campaign's development, but I imagine that getting it out on time was a real challenge. Before we begin, I feel I should at least pay my dues to the developers who busted their asses to finish this game, despite industry-wide layoffs and turmoil. I do mean this sincerely. You all rock. All right, let's talk about the game. I'll be covering it with full spoilers. Consider this your warning. I'll also be giving each level a letter grade from A to F. In order to start the campaign, you have to open Battlefield 6. If there's a queue, then you have to wait in the queue to play single player. Then you have to wait for the game to load. So you can click on the campaign option, and then you wait again as on PC the game shuts down completely and opens an entirely different executable, which also has to load, and then you can play. Also, the single-player campaign is online only. I found this out the hard way when my internet died mid-level and the game got mad. All of this setup is annoying, but whatever. Upon actually starting the campaign, we're met with an exposition dump in the form of a very dramatic video. Buckle up, because the premise of this campaign is ridiculous, and it's what spurred me to begin writing this essay. Basically, a paramilitary group called Pax Armada has popped up in Eastern Europe. Like many military FPS bad guy groups, Pax Armada is ethnically ambiguous at best, but it is distinctly not American. The game never explicitly links Pax to a specific culture or region. It does, however, utilize tropes from the Cold War and the War on Terror to define Pax, tying the group to Slavic and Arab nations, common punching bags for American war stories. This is evidenced by enemy voice lines, which are delivered in weird, clunky accents that sound vaguely Russian or Arab, depending on who's talking. But these jingoistic tropes are more clear in the general narrative setup. The following are Pax's defining features. 1. Pax is depicted as a threat from the East aiming to destroy Western hegemony through guerrilla warfare and terror attacks. 2. Pax can be found anywhere and everywhere. 3. Pax is not just a militia, it's an ideology. If you've been at all tuned into American politics over the last 70 years, this should sound familiar to you. Pax Armada is talked about much like the Soviet Union during the Red Scare and Al-Qaeda and ISIS during the War on Terror. Make no mistake, those groups did pose a very real threat to the United States, but their domestic presence was often exaggerated by bad political actors to create propaganda that justified a liberal government activity, including censorship and privacy-breaching data collection. While the USSR and Al-Qaeda are both gone, the narratives that emerged from them remain present and powerful, which is why I like to point them out when I see them, as I currently do in Pax Armada. After the cutscene, we're dropped into the first level, with Pax Armada staging a full-scale invasion of the nation of Georgia. You're immediately dropped into this fight as Sergeant Dylan Murphy, a very serious man accompanied by his 3 fun and quippy squad mates, all of whom will be killed off in the next 40 minutes, Saving Private Ryan style. This is a real pet peeve of mine. I don't like it when stories introduce shallow and boring characters who clearly only exist to be killed off and then expect me to get sad when they die. This is even more annoying when I also don't care about the character for whom their deaths are supposed to motivate, in this case, Sergeant Murphy. We don't learn much about Murphy in this first level. That's because the opening of Battlefield 6 is a hodgepodge of random set pieces strung together to create a rather shallow spectacle. See, the real goal of this level is to show off Battlefield 6's destruction tech, which admittedly is really impressive. Buildings collapse all around you, smoke rising from massive piles of rubble, grenades level walls and barriers, changing the environment in real time. It's all fun stuff, but it's stuff that the multiplayer shows off in a much more interesting way because the destruction in that mode is not scripted. It's completely emergent, rendered for all 64 players at the same time. Still, the explosions in this first level are fun to look at, which is good because this level is not fun to play. The map design is very wonky. Arenas are often too open for their own good, making enemies difficult to find. I often found myself unsure whether any given firefight was over, because more often than not, there'd be one enemy left who I'd have to scour the arena to find. This is a trend that will continue for the rest of the campaign's runtime. This also seems like the right time to point out that Battlefield 6 uses pre-rendered cutscenes for its major story sequences. They don't look great and feature some weird post-processing effects. I think in-engine cutscenes would have been better, but I also respect the choice to go pre-rendered. It makes the campaign sort of feel like an Xbox 360 game, which did tickle my nostalgia bone. After fighting some bad guys, Murphy's squad gets wiped out in a scene that's weirdly reminiscent of Spec Ops or the Battlefield 1 opening. We're then hit with a time skip, and we learn that all of Georgia fell under Pax control. This means no more peach cobbler. Sad. That's a terrible joke. This caused NATO members to lose faith in the alliance and abandon the US. That's right. The moment anyone challenged NATO, everyone who was part of the world's biggest defense alliance decided to leave. I don't want to sound like a smarmy CinemaSins guy, but this part of the plot is so unrealistic that when I learned about it, all I could do was laugh. Keep in mind, This is taking place in a world without a maniacal egomaniac president set on destroying America's military alliances. In this game, America has done nothing to worry NATO member states, except that it failed to repel Pax forces in this one specific instance. But somehow every country has decided that it would be better on its own. This just feels like a weird direction to take the story, especially considering we've seen a massive influx of countries trying to join NATO since Russia invaded Ukraine. Also, Georgia isn't even a member of NATO, so why would it being invaded cause the dissolution of NATO? This is making my head hurt. I give this first level a C-. So, post-time skip, Murphy is still boring, but now he's angry and boring. He's also breaking and entering. He clearly has a bone to pick with this woman, Mills. Mills works for the CIA, and she's Murphy's handler. Over the course of the campaign, she will be interrogated by Murphy and his squad mates in little sequences that really serve to connect each level and give exposition to the player. We're then put into our first proper level, The Rock. And honestly, this one is really good. Here we play as Gecko, one of Murphy's new squad mates in his new division, Dagger 1-3. Unlike Murphy, Gecko is actually likable. She's not very deep, but she does have a personality. She's hard-headed and prefers to tackle things head-on, which is interesting for a stealthy sniper character. There's not much to say about this level other than that it's a very competently designed sniper level. There's a good mix of long-range and up-close gunfights, and objectives are dynamic and interesting. In the beginning, I'm just sniping baddies from a cliffside, but I quickly find myself strategically raiding camps and blowing up these massive anti-air turrets. It's a good time. This level really does a good job of teaching you how to use explosives. There's a lot of turrets that you have to bomb to take out. To beat the level, you have to learn how to advance on an enemy through cover and use grenades and special equipment on the fly to further your position. Both of these are necessary skills to have in Battlefield, but they're not the things the multiplayer explicitly teaches you, so it's good the campaign has you building these skills early and often. I give this level a B+, starting off strong. There's no Mills cutscene after this level. Instead, we're thrust straight into Operation Gladius. This one takes us all the way to Gibraltar, where Murphy is stationed on a battleship. We drive this amphibious vehicle from the ship to the shore, taking down enemies and underwater mines on the way. This mission, which takes place about 90 minutes, 2 hours into the campaign, is the first time we actually get to drive a vehicle. This gets to another problem I have with the campaign. Even though vehicles are a huge part of Battlefield 6 multiplayer, they're very underutilized here. For example, the vehicle featured in this mission isn't even part of the main game, and we don't get to drive it. All we can do is shoot. We don't actually get to drive a tank until much later in the game, and we never, ever get to drive a plane, even though planes are part of every big multiplayer match. I literally went into this campaign hoping I would learn how to actually use planes in Battlefield 6, but nope. Guess I'll have to go back to good old trial and error. Unfortunately, after the tank sequence, Battlefield 6 forces you into some more bad map design. It's just like the first mission, filled with 2 open areas and confusing enemy placement. Things only improve at the very end of the level when, after meeting up with Gecko, Lopez, and Carter, you raid a city hall building. Lopez and Carter are 2 other members of Dagger 1-3. In all honesty, I almost forgot to introduce them because every character in this campaign has one defining character trait. Murphy is the leader. Gecko, who admittedly, like I said, has a little bit of a personality, is still the serious girl. And of the new characters, Lopez is the funny one, and Carter is the grizzled veteran. That's all you need to know about them, seriously. The goal of this raid is to find and capture Alexander Kincaid, the leader of Pax Armada and this story's big bad. Playing this raid sequence made me understand why the maps in Battlefield 6 are smaller than those of its predecessors. Battlefield 6's gunplay really does shine in tight spaces. Enemies go down quickly, but you do too, so you have to navigate each corner of the house strategically and carefully sweep each room for hostiles. After clearing the place out, we learn that, of course, Kincaid has already left Gibraltar. The mission ends, and we're moved into yet another cutscene. I give this level a D. That's the type of grade that would have gotten me kicked out of the house in high school. Back in the present, Mills is still tied up in her home and being interrogated by Dagger. Mills goes on a rant about how the global political order that took shape after the Second World War has ended. Something we've been told, I think, like 10 times already? Do you remember when, a while back, it came out that Netflix was telling writers to dumb down their shows so people could follow along without really paying attention? Part of that initiative was having characters repeat pertinent plot details over and over again without any nuance. This is basically what happens during these in-between mission cutscenes. For the first few hours of the campaign, nothing substantive actually happens during these scenes. The characters just lament NATO's end over and over again, in case you somehow missed it the first or second or third or fourth time. We do at least learn one thing during this scene, and that is the Egyptian president has been selling intel to Pax Armada. This kicks off the next mission, Night Raid. Like The Rock, this one isn't half bad. It even features a nice twist, but we'll get to that later in the level. In this level, we play as Carter, and we're immediately introduced to Al-Khatib. Al-Khatib is a resistance fighter in Egypt, and like everyone else, he can be described very simply. He's the friendly foreigner, the token non-American. Anyways, the goal of this mission is to find Fayek Salim, a biometric CEO carrying important PAX intel. And yes, I did have to look up that guy's name. After a short drive through war-torn Cairo, Al-Khatib drops us off at a sewer entrance, so we strap on some night vision goggles and start crawling. This sequence is pretty scripted, but enjoyable nonetheless. Honestly, I was getting sick of gunfights in open squares, so I was happy to do some sneaking around. Things are still fun once you get to the streets of Cairo. In my opinion, Cairo is the only location in this campaign with a distinct atmosphere. It's chaotic, messy, and filled with the kinds of tight arenas and corridors that let Battlefield 6's mechanics shine. It's also the only place that really feels like an active war zone. Panicked civilians are mucking about, adding a level of unpredictability to the mission that I enjoyed. After crawling through the sewers, we reached this big house filled with bad guys. Taking them out was easy enough, but I spent an embarrassingly long time circling the lower floor to find the way upstairs. I'm talking full minutes here. I don't blame this on the game, though. I think I was just having a brain fart. Anyways, we get upstairs and find Salim, except, he's dead. So we begin looking for his intel. As it turns out, the intel is all stored on a thumb drive. Except this thumb drive is literally Salim's thumb. Is this plot beat stupid? Sure. Probably. Is it funny? Hell yeah. And I point this out because I think this is the only time the game intentionally made me laugh. After getting the thumb, we escape the now burning mansion and run back onto the streets of Cairo for more actually good gunfights. This is crazy. I think I'm enjoying the campaign. It's fun to stealthily navigate the alleys of Cairo, taking down groups of PAX guys under the cover of night. Unfortunately, the fun only lasts for 10 or so minutes, because we're quickly launched into a bad boss fight. We have to take down this helicopter by hitting it with an RPG missile whenever it flies overhead. In theory, this sounds like a fun challenge, but in practice, kinda sucks. That's because the moment you step out of cover, you will get vaporized, either by the helicopter itself or one of the gazillion enemies that spawn in the boss fight arena. I ended up beating this fight by holding up in a shack, waiting until the helicopter came back into sight, hitting it with a missile, and then waiting more to strike again until the mission finally ended. I give it a C, for Cairo. The group looks for files on Project Velis, which the thumb drive pointed them to, but can't find any. Murphy and Mills foreshadow the next level, which takes place in Brooklyn. This level, called No Sleep, is, you guessed it, not very good. It's not quite as bad as Gibraltar, but it does come close. First, you storm some brownstone apartment buildings, which is actually sort of cool. This part reminded me of a lower stakes Rainbow Six mission. But unfortunately, once that's done, it's time for more tedious gunfights. We learn that Pax and Kincaid are planning a strike on New York because it's currently the site of a major diplomatic conference, so we hop into some subway tunnels and disrupt a Pax supply line. Inside the tunnels, we engage in high-speed pursuit, except it's not actually that high speed and lasts like 2 minutes. Then we fight through some construction sites. God, I really didn't like these combat encounters. They were some of my least favorite in the game. The construction sites are like mazes. I found myself always having to scour the place for the last remaining enemies, either because I couldn't see them or because their pathfinding broke. Anyways, the train we were pursuing moves to a bridge, and in a last-ditch effort to stop Pax, we order a plane to shoot the bridge down. But it doesn't work, so we go on the burning bridge and get to do some more boring gunfights. Carter is able to stop some of the missiles from launching, but falls off the bridge in the process. However, we immediately learn that he's fine, so whatever, I guess. He breaks a couple bones, but he's not really injured. Then the level ends. I give this one a C-, which hurts me because I'm from New York. I really wanted this level to be amazing. But doesn't do the city justice. So sad. There's no cutscene after this level. That's because we have to go save the president, who's holed up in a fire station in Dumbo. The major gimmick of this level is drones. I have to give credit where credit is due. The drones are one of the more creative enemy types I've seen in a military FPS game. With these things, shooting down a drone is only half the battle. They'll keep coming until you take out the drone operator, who's often camping out nearby, hidden behind some cover. After taking out some drones on the roof, Dagger realizes that the drone operators must be camping out in Prospect Park, so we take out some enemies there. Now that the local PAX forces have been eliminated, we can begin to escort the president to safety. I don't have much to say about the sequence because, it's fine, it's whatever. In another part of town, all-out war has broken out between PAX and US forces. Amidst the chaos, it seems that Carter and Murphy may finally be able to confront Kincaid and end this. But it's never that simple, is it? Just when Carter and Murphy think they're going to ambush Kincaid, they themselves are ambushed by Kincaid. Kincaid unceremoniously kills Carter, while a restrained Murphy is forced to watch. Finally, Kincaid can tell us what this war is about. So far, all we've really learned is that he's pissed because Carter allegedly abandoned him in a previous mission, though Carter only did so because he thought Kincaid was actually dead. Side note, I hadn't mentioned any of this because it's not that important. But what's the real reason behind Kincaid's loathing of America, his total animosity? If the game's writers have something to say, now would be the time to do it. Guys, got anything? Anything? Who am I kidding? Of course they don't. Since the start of the game, it's been clear that Kincaid wants to end Western hegemony, but we never really learn what he wants to replace it with, what his vision for the world actually is. This speech makes him come across as an anarcho-capitalist or some kind of free market libertarian. He wants to liberate countries from American control so they can do what they've already been doing, which is participate in global capitalism, a system of which America is like the biggest backer. It's all really vague. I'd imagine that's by design, to avoid stepping on any toes. The problem is that a villain without a good motivation is hardly a villain. They're just a dude you fight sometimes. I give this level a B-. After saving President Fernandez, we return to the interrogation scene. Murphy blames Mills for Carter's death, accusing her of being either a traitor or incompetent. It's becoming incredibly clear why Dagger have entered Mills' home. They clearly have a bone to pick with her. Then we're met with another baffling plot point. So, you know how the whole preface of this campaign was the destruction of NATO? Remember how we just spent 3 hours listening to everyone tell us that NATO was gone and never coming back, ever? Well, it actually turns out that the President of the United States can just remake NATO whenever he wants.
I thought you were dead.
My death was greatly exaggerated.
This begs the important question, why didn't Fernandez do this before Pax tried to kill him? Couldn't he have revived NATO before the attack on Brooklyn, potentially scaring Pax away? The game doesn't answer either of those questions, presumably because, as we've established, it's not very well written. Side note, it was this cutscene that really made me realize how much of a rushed mess this campaign is. I was so baffled by it that all I could do was respond with laughter. I imagine the writers realized they needed to wrap things up, but quickly realized they made Pax too powerful to be defeated in the next 3 levels. Having written themselves into a hole, they turned to the clumsiest possible deus ex machina. Bring NATO back so the player can feel like they're on the winning team again. The next level, Nile Guard, is generally unremarkable. You play as Al-Khatib, Dagger's man in Egypt, mobilizing a squad of tanks against Pax forces. This mission contains what is by far the longest vehicle section in the campaign. That may sound impressive, until you remember that the campaign has like 3 vehicle sections in total. Then it's shooting people in squares, running down alleyways, and shooting people in squares again. I wish I had more to say about this level, but I don't, because it's very boring. I'm falling asleep just thinking about it. I give this one an F. It sucks. Don't play it. In Virginia, Pax soldiers are circling Mills's home, but the team takes them out. That's it. Literally, that's all that happens. Next level. Operation Ember Strike is the best mission in this campaign, and the only level that I can say is genuinely great. The level takes place in Tajikistan, near the heart of Pax's operations. The setup is simple. We have to take out 4 Pax anti-air cannon stations. Each one is placed on a different edge of a giant map, and we can take down the first 3 in any order we want. Ember Strike reminded me a lot of a certain mission in Halo Infinite, a game that I otherwise don't really like, but in that mission, titled Pelican Down, you have to take down 3 large cannons in a big arena. Both Pelican Down and Ember Strike are great examples of non-linear FPS design because they don't just give you a wide open field filled with enemies to shoot and call it a day. Instead, they force you to actually strategize. You have to decide what direction you want to approach enemies from, what tools you want to bring, whether you want to be stealthy or go in guns blazing. I tackled this mission as a sniper, quietly taking down targets from a distance before storming in with an AR to finish the job. This mission also makes full use of the campaign's different enemy types. Sniper towers flank each Pax station, where normal enemies are placed alongside shotgunners, heavy gunners, drone operators, and turrets. Despite being non-linear encounters, the Pax station gunfights feel more thoughtfully designed than most of the fights in the game thus far. Instead of being scattered across arenas, the enemies in this mission are placed with some degree of real intentionality. It's amazing how much of Battlefield 6's design clicks into place when the game lets the player run free. Wide-open gunfights actually work here because they're contextualized in a larger sandbox. This level makes clear that Battlefield 6's mechanics work best in extremes. It's fun to crawl down extremely tight corridors, sweeping rooms for enemies and performing stealth takedowns. It's also fun to run around a big map, making full use of every tool the game gives you. What's not fun is fighting waves of enemies in a mid-sized arena that's not small enough to have interesting choke points, but not big enough to be an actual sandbox. Unfortunately, the final stretch of Operation Ember Strike is considerably more linear and, as a result, less enjoyable to play. After a taste of, dare I say, greatness, we're back to the mid-sized, open but not too open arenas that make up the bulk of this campaign. The last showdown of this level takes place on a dam. After taking out some enemies, all you really have to do is dodge explosives until, despite Murphy's pleading, Mills gives the order to blow up the dam and flood Pax territory. The dam explosion scene is the worst cutscene in the game. It looks straight out of a PS4 launch title. I don't know exactly why I find it so hard to look at. I think it's a combination of a few things. Firstly, 30 FPS cutscenes just stand out in a game that usually runs around 60 FPS on my rig. Secondly, the handheld effect is really unnatural looking. I get that we're supposed to be seeing this from Gecko's perspective, but the camera shake is really distracting. Third, for a game obsessed with realism, the whole thing feels super fake. This is a pre-rendered cutscene, but the lighting and water effects resemble those found in-engine gameplay on medium settings. I know all of this is nitpicking, considering the cutscene is like a minute long and no one probably remembers it anyways, but what is this channel for if not nitpicking? Anyways, I give this level an A-. I guess you could call that improvement. I should also add that the recently deceased Carter has been replaced by CIA operative Hemlock. Hemlock is the loose cannon. He's edgy, sulking, and generally annoying to be around. I think he's supposed to be a copy of Ghost from COD Modern Warfare 2, but Ghost had a personality. Hemlock does not. He's so uninteresting that I forgot to introduce him until most of the Ember Strike part of this video had already been written. Back in Virginia, Mills tries to escape, but is caught by Dagger once again. The team yells at her for calling the strike that blew up the dam. Murphy even calls her, quote, the enemy from within, end quote, blaming her for the Brooklyn attacks. Why might he do that? We're about to find out. The next level of the game is also the final one. Always Forward feels rushed, and knowing that the campaign was the last part of Battlefield 6 to enter Alpha, it probably was. Here, Murphy and Dagger 1-3 are making the final push against Pax Armada in Tajikistan. They are joined by throngs of forces from the recently and miraculously revived NATO. Dagger's goal is to find and capture Kincaid while preventing Pax from launching a wave of missiles. The early fights in this level are more of the same. We still don't get to use any of the game's many vehicles. We just have to mow our way through more mid-sized arenas with weird enemy placement. Except now there are more enemies than usual. It's a real trudge to get to the missile silo. You're just gunning down wave after wave of the same enemies you've already been fighting for hours. Still, it's nice to be playing a level that feels like Battlefield, in that it's no longer just Dagger versus Pax. This is a full-scale conflict. For once, you're just a single troop member in a field full of battalions, all fighting for survival. And it actually feels like you're fighting in a war. A little later on, we do actually get to pilot a tank again, though it gets blown up quickly because I'm not good at this game. Upon reaching the missile silo, we find out that the launch process has already started. We can still disable the missile, but we risk detonating it and killing ourselves in the process, which maybe wouldn't be so bad because it'd mean I'd be done with this campaign a little sooner. Fortunately, or unfortunately for me, Lopez and Murphy are able to shut down the missile because they have plot armor. Another squad isn't so lucky. We then make for Kincaid's hiding place, an underground bunker, and after fighting through the bunker, we finally reach Kincaid. An angry Murphy shoots him in the leg to prevent him from running away. As Murphy begins to radio Mills, Kincaid starts talking. He says that he's not actually the one in charge of Pax Armada. Instead, he claims that Mills has been in charge of it the whole time, and that Pax is backed by the CIA, who wanted to create a common enemy to unite NATO against.
What's me dead so bad? You're here to clean up on loose ends.
Trying to get in your head. Same as Carter.
I'm her recruit. All this time, Pax had the backing of the CIA, you dumb fuck. Mills!
What the fuck are you talking about?
It was all her doing, along with her cronies. They needed a big bad.
He's lying.
They fucking got one.
Georgia.
According to him, the CIA was behind all American deaths in this conflict, including those of soldiers who just got blown up by Pax missiles 10 minutes ago. Pax was Project Velas, and Pax was meant to lose. This, in all honesty, is a somewhat smart twist, because it sort of explains why NATO was rebuilt so quickly. At the same time, it's pretty flimsy. After all, Pax is what destroyed NATO to begin with. Obviously, NATO wasn't in the best shape at the start of the game, but we have no indication that they would have collapsed without Pax. It also seems like Pax, and by extension the CIA, was genuinely planning to kill the president, even though the president was sympathetic to NATO and responsible for its eventual reboot. The game deals with this plot point by claiming that Pax got out of CIA control in Brooklyn. But if that's true, then why did Mills choose to take things even further? Additionally, making Pax a CIA creation is simply boring. If Pax has no real viewpoint, if they're just a government ploy, then it makes them not very interesting to fight. Fine, whatever. Now we're faced with a choice. Do we kill Kincaid or take him in for questioning? Except it's not a choice because Hemlock shoots and kills him before Murphy can act. Meanwhile, Mills has called for bombs to be dropped over Pax's headquarters, killing any remaining soldiers, Pax and US. It's clear she intends to bury Dagger 1-3, along with Kincaid, but Dagger manages to escape the bunker just in time. Hemlock commandeers a helicopter and everyone boards it. As they fly away, Murphy swears that he'll get revenge on Mills. Back in the present, Mills confesses to helping build PAX. But she says that PAX had been in development for decades, with funding from the CIA and the larger military-industrial complex. Hemlock tells Murphy that he should kill Mills to prevent her from fleeing the country. Gecko asks Murphy to arrest Mills and take her in, telling him that, quote, "we don't do executions," end quote. Mills says that Murphy should let her go, as she's convinced she'll be killed in U.S. custody. Murphy asks everyone to leave the house, then he raises his gun and shoots Mills. Roll credits. I guess the ending is supposed to imply that losing his squad and Carter turned Murphy into the jaded, calculating person that Mills always was. But you can't get two dimensions out of a one-dimensional character. We're told that Murphy has changed throughout the campaign, but we never get to see it, because he's always just the loud leader. There's nothing else to him, no depth, no complexity. Because of this, the ending rang hollow for me. I give the final level a D. And then the game executable closes. There's no menu to go back to after credits. It just shuts down. Maybe the devs knew that I wasn't planning on hitting the new game button anytime soon. That wraps the Battlefield 6 campaign. It has its moments, sure, but those glints of goodness are tied up in a series of truly baffling design decisions. It's evident the whole thing was extremely rushed. Ember Strike and The Rock are the only levels that don't feel cut or neutered in some way. It's clear I'm not the only person who had problems with this campaign. Upon release, Battlefield 6's single player was widely panned by a host of critics. SkillUp gave it a negative review, and Aftermath called it, quote, narrative cowardice, end quote. At IGN, Simon Carty gave it a 5 out of 10, which is like the lowest score IGN gives anything these days. By contrast, IGN gave the game's multiplayer offerings an 8, a well-deserved score, because, like I've said, the multiplayer is really good. The large-scale battle modes basically take the sandbox of Operation Ember Strike and force-feed it steroids. The maps are full of destructive buildings you can creatively use to advance on an enemy position. You can tell the multiplayer maps and modes got a few months of extra love and polish. They're just better. Playing with real people also fosters real feelings of camaraderie that greatly elevate the overall experience. When I play multiplayer, I really feel like I'm part of a team, something I never felt during the 6 hours I spent with Dagger 1-3. The reason I've been so hard on this campaign is because I want it to be good. I'm sure the people who spent months or years of their lives working on this wanted it to be good as well. As Luke Plunkett wrote in the aforementioned Aftermath article, there are moments where you can tell the game is trying to say something, but the message always comes out muddled. The thing is, I can't really blame the developers for struggling to tell a good military story. They were working on an insanely short timeline, which I imagine was the result of poor management from higher-ups who weren't very creatively involved in the project. But let's be real. Even if the campaign was developed on a proper timeline, it's not like we were ever going to get a morally compelling war story from EA. Mere weeks before Battlefield 6's launch, the company announced that they'd be acquired in a $55 billion leveraged buyout, the largest in economic history. Who exactly is buying EA? A private equity firm called Silver Lake Partners, another private equity firm called Affinity Partners, which is run by Donald Trump's nephew Jared Kushner, and the goddamn Saudi Arabia Sovereign Wealth Fund. EA is so committed to this deal that they're taking on $30 billion in debt to make it happen. This is pure speculation on my part, but I imagine releasing a campaign with an actual political and moral position might have been too great a risk for EA's board of investors. They're probably acting with a lot of caution right now, since the deal hasn't been approved yet. So, if EA is not going to do it, who will? Because when was the last time a military shooter actually told an interesting and compelling story with an actual message? Was Wolfenstein 2 the last one to do it? A game that came out 8 years ago? Or was it Spec Ops: The Line, a game that came out 13 years ago, which you can't even buy anymore? No other medium struggles to talk about war like games. Since Spec Ops came out in 2012, we've gotten a tremendous amount of great war movies. American Sniper, 1917, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, All Quiet on the Western Front, Hacksaw Ridge. These films all have something to say. They aren't afraid to confront the awful realities of war, and audiences love them for it. In the same 13-year time frame, how many great war stories have games given us? 1? 0? Are publishers afraid of stirring political controversy? This could very well be the case, considering how many gamers seem to be convinced that woke is ruining games, as opposed to the real problems of rampant mismanagement and insatiable greed. Just this year, Ubisoft was relentlessly attacked by racist right-wing influencers for including a very real black man whose existence is well documented in Assassin's Creed Shadows. Or are publishers just afraid of making players uncomfortable for just a moment, even though uncomfortable stories are the ones that tend to stay with us the longest? The whole reason people still talk about Spec Ops fondly is because it made them uncomfortable. I think there's a real longing for stories that frankly depict and discuss war, but it's clear that AAA studios aren't interested in exploring that territory anytime soon. I'd be interested to see if any indie devs pick up the slack, though I haven't seen any do it yet, at least not in the FPS genre. Indie milsims tend to be more focused on realism than narrative. I get it. War is a difficult and upsetting subject. Realistic depictions of it don't exactly make for a fun game. But it's exactly the difficult and upsetting parts of our world that need art and artists the most. Thank you.